This next Lord's Day, all of our Sunday school classes, as part of the Gospel Project curriculum, will be doing a survey of Ecclesiastes. And so, sitting in one of our Skyline Sunday school classes, I wanted to take just a few minutes to kind of talk about Ecclesiastes. It's regarded by many people as either maybe a negative book, a dark book, or definitely a mysterious book, sometimes a confusing book. And so there are some key points that I just want to underline before we have our survey on Sunday during Sunday school. First is the title. The title Ecclesiastes tells us something right away. That word is related to the word ecclesia, which means church. The ecclesiastes was the person that would gather the church, call the church, or the assembly of God's covenant people together. And in some translations, he's called the preacher or the teacher. It's the same in the Hebrew. Ecclesiastes is the Greek title. The Hebrew title is Koheleth. And Koheleth is the teacher or the gatherer of the assembly. That word assembly in the Hebrew is kahel. So the kahel is gathered by the Koheleth. The ecclesia is gathered by the Ecclesiastes. And so we see that this book is a church book. This book is a book of wisdom for God's covenant people. That's the first thing I wanted to underline for you guys. The second thing I want you to see is that this book, Ecclesiastes, is an extended commentary on life this side of the fall. It's really an exposition, in a sense, of Genesis chapter 3, where after humanity has rebelled against God, remember, humanity was created to rule and to reign over creation, to be in dominion, representing God's sovereignty over creation. But after man rebelled against God, God did something to creation. He twisted it. He caused it to rebel against humanity. It says in his punishment of Adam in Genesis chapter 3, verse 18, it says, "Both thorns and thistles, that is the ground, shall grow for you. You will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, and for you are dust, and to dust you shall return." Ecclesiastes is about life in thorny fields, if you will, that we're trying to get bread from. And so we see that from the very beginning. The words of the preacher, this is Ecclesiastes 1:1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, the king in Jerusalem. "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Vanity. Everything that we do in this life, everything that we do in creation, whether we control it or build it or fix it, whatever it is, it's only temporary. And that's a major theme of Ecclesiastes, living in a temporary world that has been twisted because of sin. Mankind sinned, God ordains and says, okay, you don't want to follow me, you want to rebel against me, then you're not going to be able to turn this place into heaven. Earth will never be heaven. It won't last. We see in Ecclesiastes 1:15, what is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. What is crooked cannot be straightened. Well, who made it crooked? Well, in chapter 7, verse 13, we see, consider the work of God who is able to straighten what he has bent. God has made this world the way it is. He made everything good, put us in charge. We rebelled, and he says, here's the fruit of your rebellion. Everything you do will be at best temporary. Paul picks up on this theme in Romans chapter 8. He says this about creation. The creation, this is Romans 8:20, the creation was subjected to futility. Futility. That everything in creation is just here for a moment and gone the next. And you and I at the same time are hardwired to bring order and dominion to all things, and yet nothing of our order or our dominion will last. And so we are meant to seek heaven, to seek order, to seek hope, to seek restoration, somewhere besides the labor of our own hands, and that is in Jesus Christ. He says just a verse later, the creation itself will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation groans and suffers. So right now, it's not just us and our sin that need a Savior, but the creation's just waiting for all things to be made new. What was good in the beginning to be made right again and restored. So that's really Ecclesiastes. It fits right there in the middle of our Bible between Genesis 3 with the thorny fields that we've got to get bread from, the dust that will work until we return to that dust, to Romans chapter 8 with the redemption of humanity, and creations just can't wait for that redemption to be complete. There's two more things I want to point out to you. There's a theme going throughout Ecclesiastes, which is maybe the most important practical point for us in living in a thorny, twisted, temporary world. And that is this idea that God gives us good things every day. So the message of Ecclesiastes isn't quite as dark and negative as it at first appears. Yes, we're in this world that has been twisted and broken and messed up because of our sin. And that's the punishment from God, is this creation rebels against us. But that doesn't mean every day is miserable. God every day blesses with good things. And we hear this theme that we are to enjoy those good things throughout Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 24 says, "There is nothing better for man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good." So even work is a blessing from God. We see that in Genesis 1. God blesses and then gives work for humanity in Genesis 1. But here in Ecclesiastes 2:24, "There's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. This also I have seen, that it is from the hand of God. Who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him?" Chapter 3, verse 22, "I have seen that nothing is better than that man should be happy in his activities." I think I missed one. Yeah, the beginning. Chapter 3, verse 12, "I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks sees good in all his labor. It is the gift of God." Chapter 5, verse 18, "Here is what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor, in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him." Chapter 7, verse 14, "In the day of prosperity, be happy." Chapter 8, verse 15, "So I commended pleasure, for there is nothing good for a man under the sun except to eat and to drink and to be merry, and this will stand by him in his toils throughout the days of his life which God has given him under the sun." Chapter 9, verse 7, "Go then, eat your bread in happiness, drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let your clothes be white all the time. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given you under the sun. For this is your reward in life and in your toil, in which you have labored under the sun." And so he tells us what God gives us today, enjoy it. But the vanity of vanities is there almost as a balance. The good things he gives us today, don't idolize them. Don't let them be your hope, because they may not be here tomorrow. What he gives today, enjoy it. Be thankful to him for it. But don't let it become your God. Don't let it become your everything. Don't let it become your hope, because this is the nature of this vanity of vanities world. What is here today may not be here tomorrow. The final thing I want to underline for you guys is found several places in Ecclesiastes, but especially in chapter 12, where we're reminded that a day of judgment is coming. And that in this temporary world, we may have good things today, we may have difficulty today. We're to hope in God for tomorrow, but we need to remember that we will be held accountable for how we live in this world. We see that in several places. He says at the very end of the book, he says in Ecclesiastes 12, verses 13 and 14, "Fear God, keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything that is hidden, whether good or evil." So there's that balance there. This enjoyment doesn't turn into hedonism. It doesn't become immoral. It doesn't become gluttony or excess in any way. If God allows us to have it today, be thankful for it. Be thankful, but it is not to become our God, because the day of judgment is coming by the one true God. Just before that, he says this, "The words of wise men," remember, Ecclesiastes is one of the wisdom books of the Bible. "The words of the wise are like goads, and master of these collections are like well-driven nails. They are given by one shepherd." I love that line. The wisdom of God, the wisdom of the wisdom books of the Bible is given by one shepherd. And we find out in the New Testament that the one greater than Solomon, the one in whom all the treasures of the wisdom of God are found, is Jesus Christ. He is the one shepherd. He is the one is our hope for tomorrow. He is the one that all the joys of this world are just a shadow of him and point to him. All the wisdom in the Bible points to Jesus, our one good shepherd.